Hi guys, this is Andrew with rockclass101.com, and in this week's ukulele lesson, Matt's going to be teaching you one of my favorite jazz standards, Take 5. So as the name implies, this song is in 5. So that means we're counting 5 beats per measure, which is kind of odd because we're so used to counting 4 and 3. But keep that thought in mind because Matt's going to explain it in a little bit more detail once you jump into the lesson. Now, the thing that I think is the coolest aspect of this arrangement is that we have done it as a duet. So you get to work on the best of both worlds. You get to learn the rhythm part, but you also get to learn the lead part, the melody playing. So you get to work on both aspects of playing. So the lesson will kick off with the rhythm part, but I think the lead playing is going to be the challenging part of this arrangement because it breaks you away from playing melody lines that aren't all up here in the beginning of the neck. You're going to be playing in some positions down here that you may not have done yet. So it's going to be a great challenge in that regard. So let's talk a little bit about the lesson. So in this video, Matt's going to teach you the entire tune. And if you do want to get the tabs to print off and follow along with, you can do so by clicking this link or going to the site rockclass101.com and doing a search for Take 5. And also on that page will be the really cool interactive tab player. Now this is a really cool feature where you can hit play and you can watch the tab scroll across in real time. You can highlight bars to loop sections, slow it down to any speed you wish. Just a great asset in learning this song that much easier. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Matt to teach you how to play this tune, and then I'll see you at the end of the video.
Today we're going to work on a solo arrangement of Take 5. Now this is one of my favorite jazz standards, and one of the reasons it's one of my favorites is because the name Take 5 is also the timing that it has. It's actually in what's called 5/4 timing, which is really bizarre, something that we don't usually play in. A more common time signature would be 4/4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. But 5/4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and. Very bizarre. To work on this, though, and what helped me learn it was starting to subdivide this a little bit, almost making it into kind of like a compound time signature. But all that I'm doing here is counting to 3 and then 2 for each measure. So instead of going 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and, which can get easy to get lost in, I'm instead going to go 1 and 2 and 3 and, which is 3, and then 1 and 2 and, which is 2. Which I know it sounds just as complicated, but if you listen to it with a pulse, it sounds really good. If I just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, there's no real groove. But if I go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, creates a really nice vibe. So that's what we're going to use to count this. Instead of counting to 5 every time, we'll count to 3 and then to 2. At the end of the day, though, if it sounds like the song and you're playing the right stuff, it doesn't really matter as long as you're, it doesn't matter however you count it, as long as what you're doing is correct. But let's go ahead and dive in to Melody A, and we're going to work on the ukulele 1 part. In this case, the ukulele 1 is doing what we call it's comping, playing the chords in the background. And so it starts off here with measure 1 with this G minor chord. Now to play this, you're going to take your ring finger, place it on the 7th fret of the C string, your middle finger here on the 6th fret of the E string, and then really important is to take your index finger and bar it across the C, E, and A strings on the 5th fret. I know it seems kind of weird because we're only really playing the A string right now, but trust me, it comes into play here in just a moment. We're going to start by plucking the C, and then the E and the A. I like to use my thumb on the C, index and middle on the E and the A. And it does that a second time. And then it moves to 2 on the C. And what you're going to do, take that bar and just slide it down to fret 2 right here. And then move that bar back up to 5 and play the E and A strings both on the 5th fret. And that's why we had that bar there in the first place. Because that bar is just moving and making it much easier to play. So here's what it sounds like in time at a really, really, really slow time using this counting method that we talked about. Should be something like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 3, 1 and 2 and. So here it is again. Just so you can hear that groove. Now here's what's cool. That's measure 1. and measure 2, and measure 3, and measure 4, and measure 5, and measure 6, and measure 7, and measure 8, and measure 9, and measure 10, and a measure 11, and measure 12. The comping part, the chords, is literally the same progression for 12 straight measures, which it doesn't get a whole lot better than that, right? So when you're practicing this, you want to just get comfortable playing that 12 times in a row as you go through exactly the same. I recommend practicing along with a recording or something so you don't get lost, because it's very easy to just, which one am I on? So when you're playing with somebody else, it's easier to follow along too. So we play that for 12 measures for the entirety of melody A. Now we go on to melody B. And with this melody B, things get a lot more interesting for this comping part. We're going to start here with this C minor 7 chord. To play this, we're going to take our index finger and just bar it across the 6th fret of the E and the A strings. We're going to pluck our open C, then our E and their A, open C, E and A. Then we're going to move to this C minor 6 chord, and to do that, you just take this bar and you move it down 1 fret to 5. Take that middle finger and you add it onto the 6th fret of the A string. And you're going to play 0 on the C, and then the 5 on the E, and 6 on the A together. So the counting of this is the same. It's the exact same rhythm where it's doing the 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and. It's exactly the same as what we were playing measures 1 through 12, which were obviously the same thing played again and again. So here's what measure 13 sounds like really slowly. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and. Going on to measure 14 now, we're going to go to this D minor chord. Just take your index finger, bar across the 5th fret of the C, E, and A strings. Pluck the C string, then the E and the A together. C again, E and A again. And then we're going to switch chords for the little second half of this measure, right? So this is our 1 and 2 and 3 and. And for the 1 and 2 and, we're going to switch to this G minor, which should be familiar because it's the same thing we played in measure 1 through 12. Add the ring finger on 7 of the C, add the middle finger on 6 of the E, so that you have your 7, 6, 5 here. Play the C string, and then the E and the A. So in time, that's something like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and. Going on to measure 15. Measure 15 is actually exactly the same as measure 13. Exactly identical in every way, which is great. Now we go on to measure 16, which is a little bit different. On measure 16, we're going to go to this B flat chord. To play this, it's basically like a G chord shape moved up. Index finger here on the 5th fret of the C string, ring finger on the 6th fret of the E string, and the middle finger here on the 5th fret of the A string. We're going to play the C string, then the E and the A together, C string again, E and A together again. So that's the 1 and 2 and 3 and. And then for the second half of this measure, or the last 2 beats rather, it's going to go this little diminished chord. And what you're going to do is you're just going to flip-flop. If you think of this as a G chord, the next one's like a G7 on 5, 4, and 5, with your 5th fret here with the middle finger on the C string, 4th fret here on the E string with your index finger, and ring finger here on the 5th fret of the A. We're going to play the C string, and then the E and the A together. So that measure in time, measure 16, should be something like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and. Now at this point, it repeats, and it goes right back into measure 13. And we play 13 and then 14, which should sound something like this. But then instead of going on to measure 15, we now are going to go on to the second ending here on measure 17. To start this, really simple, we just bar across the 3rd fret with our index finger on our C, E, and A strings, pluck the C string, pluck the E and A together, C, E, and A again. And then we're going to play a different chord. This is actually the same as the C minor 6 we played earlier. 0 on the C string, move the index to 5 on the E, and the middle here on 6 of the A. So that measure in time is something like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 2, 1, and so I just made a little mistake there, right? This is really a great example about how difficult it is to count all this stuff. It really is challenging when you're counting to 5. I immediately defaulted to 4/4 time, you know, what I normally do for these tutorials. So when you're practicing this, be very careful because everyone will make mistakes with it. But let's go and look at measure 17 again with the correct count. Should be something like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and. And now as we go on to measure 18, this one changes up a little bit. Moves down to a D7 chord, bar the index finger across the 2nd fret. Use your middle finger here on the 3rd fret of the A string. Pluck the C, pluck the E and the A, C, E and A again. But then it's going to change to this high D7. Just take that bar, move it up to 5, add the middle finger here on 6 of the C string, and then just strum through all 4 strings. And we're going to hold this for 2 beats. So measure 18 is something like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and. And then from here, it goes back into melody A. But before we get there, this is what melody B should sound like all together. So it's a lot of stuff here. I'm going to play it nice and slow so that you can hear and see how it should go with the repeat. So measure 13. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and. Now, what's cool about this is on measure 19, we go back to melody A. It's just a repeat of melody A, and measures 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25 are all the same as measure 1. Measures 1 through 12. It's the exact same part that we played before. Exactly the same all the way until measure 26. And at measure 26, we finally do something new, but it's nice and easy. Just take your index finger barred across the 10th fret of the C, E, and A strings, strum through all 4 strings with just your thumb. And that is the end to the ukulele 1 part, which is just, again, the chords and comping. Let's go on to melody A again, but now with ukulele 2, which is going to be the melody. And this is where it gets a little more spicy, a little bit more difficult. So to start here, you'll notice that it's actually rests for the first 3 measures. And we essentially have a pickup bar for the melody on measure 4. So that's where we're going to start. So for playing this, I use my thumb exclusively as I go through this. I pluck every single note with the thumb. I think it feels good, gets me a good tone, and that's what I like to do. If you want to use other finger picking or whatever else is comfortable, go for it. And if it works, awesome. But let's go ahead and start here on measure 4 at the end of it. So to start, we're going to go 1 and 2 and 3 and with nothing. And then we're going to play this line here, which is. Now, to play this, really simple, middle finger here on 2 of the C, ring finger on 3 of the E, index on 1 of the A, and ring on 3 of the A. In time, that should be something like this. And I'm going to count just the pickup bar here. So it's 1 and 2 and 3 and. As we go now into measure 5, we're going to do this really cool little slide. So we're at kind of this, this position here. So we play our pinky on 4, and then we slide up to 5. So it goes, and then we come back down to 3 on the A, and I like to use my ring finger there. Then 1 on the A with the index, 3 on the E with the ring, 2 on the C with the middle, and then 1 on the E with the index. So in time, that bar is something like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and. Now going right into measure 6, we're going to play 3 on the E with the ring finger. And that's going to last the full 3 beats of the 3-2 relationship that we've been establishing. So 1 and 2 and 3 and. And then we get our little embellishment. Now, this is my favorite part of the song to play because it just sounds so cool with this little hammer-on pull-off. So what we're going to do, you'll notice it's really fast. It's 16th notes. The count here is going to be 1E and a 2 and, right? Where it goes 1E and a 2 as we get into that note. So the way that we play is open on the A, and we're going to hammer on with our index finger, pull off, back to open, and then play 3 on the E immediately. This is a good thing to just practice in isolation. 1E and a 1E and a 2. 1E and the 2 there that I just mentioned is 1 on the E string with the index finger. So what I did when I was working on this arrangement is just sit there and practice this. 1E and a 2. 1E and a 2. Because that's really what makes this tune. So measure 6 in time should be something like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and. And that's that 1E and a 2 and. And we go on to measure 7. 7 is exactly the same as measure 6 in terms of timing. We're going to play the 3 on the E again. But then the riff, instead of being here, is going to be here. And to play that, we're going to take our index finger here on 1 of the E, play it, hammer onto 3 on the E, then pull off, and then play 2 on the C, and then open on the C. 1E and a 2. 1E and a 2. And it's so important to get comfortable with that. Sounds good though. Now if you're struggling with those hammer-ons and pull-offs, there's a couple different videos that are linked below that you can check out. But it's really important to get really comfortable with the fingers going right up into the fret wire. If you're in the middle here, it can sound bad. Get right up into that fret wire and make sure you got a nice clear arch with your fingertips. Otherwise it's just not going to sound good. But really fun technique. So now that was measure 7. Should sound something like this in time. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and. And now we go on to the next measure here, measure 8. We're going to play 2 on the C string. We're going to hold that for 3 beats. So 1 and 2 and 3 and. And then we're going to play the same thing that we played in measure 4. It's exactly the same. Exact same riff in every single way. 1 and 2 and. Which is kind of neat because it then essentially restarts this sort of riff. So measure 8 in time should sound something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now from this point, we're going to actually listen to how all of this sounds because this is essentially a repeat in the song. So we're going to start at measure 4 and we're going to play through this whole section so that you can hear this sort of sound. So starting at 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and. Now, as you're playing that, it's really easy to kind of get off because it's actually in some ways easier to play this fast than it is to play it slow, which sounds insane, but it just sounds good when you get that comfortable. So from here, we go on to measure 9. Now measure 9, exactly the same as measure 5. And then measure 6 here. Measure 6 is actually exactly the same as measure 7. So it's kind of skipping around a little bit, but it's exactly identical to measure 7. So measure 10 should sound something like this. 2 and, or excuse me, 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and. And then measure 11 is going to be exactly the same as measure 6. So it just flip-flops them, right? Normally 5, 6, 7, 8. Well, when it goes 9, 10, 11, 12, 10 and 11 are flip-flopped with 6 and 7. Sounds confusing, but sounds good. And so measure 11 is something like this, where we're at the 2 on the C. And then we're going to play going into that with measure 12. So measures 9, 10, 11, and 12 are the same as 5, 6, 7, 8, just flip-flopped a little bit. It's like 5, 7, 6, 8 when you go 9, 10, 11, 12. But here's what it sounds like, which should help everything. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and. And in 12, it doesn't pick up again because that's actually the end of melody A. So that you can hear it though, here is all of melody A for the ukulele melody part, the ukulele 2. It should sound something like this, starting with measure 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and. And that's the end of melody A. Now we go on to melody B, and melody B of Ukulele 2 is the hardest part of the song. It's actually the reason why I play the song at a certain speed. I might want to play a little bit faster, but this is the part that makes it tricky. This is basically a scale exercise way up on the dusty end of the fretboard, but as you get comfortable with it, it's super fun. So let's go ahead and dive in right away, measure 13. It's going to start here with your index finger on the 10th fret of the A string. And you're going to take the pinky, place on 12 of the A, back down to the index on 10. Then you're going to take your middle and place it on 11 of the E. Then ring finger on 12 of the C. Index on 10 of the E. Middle on 11 of the E. Ring on 12 of the E. So that sounds something like this. And in time, counting that, 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and. Going into measure 14, we add the pinky now on 13 of the E string. Quick tip, you'll notice that when I'm marching these fingers up, I keep them on the string, on the fret, right? When it goes 10, 11, 12, 13, I don't want to go 10, 11, 12, 13. That's wasted effort. Keep them on the string until you have to move them. So we play 13, then 12 on the A, so I have to move that finger down, ring finger down to 12 on the A, then 13 on the E again with the pinky. Index here on 10 of the E, index jumps down to 10 on the C, 12 with the ring finger on the C, 13 on the C string with the pinky, 10 on the E with the index. Whew, way up there, right? But it should sound something like this in time on measure 14. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and. Going into measure 15 now, middle finger goes on 11 of the E string, 10 on the A with the index, 11 on the E again with the middle, 12 on the C with the ring, and then it's going to go index down to 9 on the C, 10 with the middle finger, 11 with the ring finger, 12 with the pinky. So all getting right up in those frets. Tight squeeze there. So measure 15 should sound like this in time. 2 or 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and. Going right into 16 here, we're going to take our middle finger and place it on 10 of the E string, and then index on 9 of the E, back with the middle on 10 of the E, ring on 11 of the E, and here's the dicey part. This was the hardest part for me when I was trying to perform this song. Pinky goes up to 13 on the E, so it skips 12, right? So it goes 10, 9, 10, 11, 13. And then we're going to play 13 again. And I like to use my ring finger now on 12 of the E, and then pinky on 13 again, and then index on 9 of the A. So that measure 16, should sound something like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and. And from here it repeats. And then that repeat, I just played the whole thing through measure 16. Now we repeat back to measure 13 again. Now, what happens here is instead of going to measure 15, as I did here, we go on to measure 17 for the second ending, which starts out the exact same. Starts off with exactly the same as measure 15 for the first part, but then it changes. And for the change there, you'll notice we're going to play 11 on the E string, 10 on the A, 11 on the E again, 12 on the C, all that's the same. But then it's going to play 9 on the C, use your index finger there. And then it's going to play 12 on the C. Use your ring finger to jump up there to 12, because then your pinky's going to play 13 on the E. And then middle finger on 11 of the E, and then index on 10 of the E. And that actually ends the B section. You'll notice there's some extra notes here at the end of the B section, but that's just another pickup back to the A, which we'll talk about in just a minute. So measure 17 should sound something like this, 17 into 18. 2 or 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and. And then from here it goes back into that little pickup that we did on melody A. But so that you can hear it, here's all of melody B. This is a really hard part. I'm stressing out playing it right now, but it's fun when you get it. And here we go. Let's go for it. So all of melody B with the repeats should sound something like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and. Woohoo! It's a stressful part to play, especially when you're practicing it really slow, because you're trying to make sure every note is right. And so I recommend biting off small parts. You'll notice in the performance, this part, this is what causes a lot of practice, but it's really fun up in the high parts of the fretboard. So here's what's really cool is from here we go back to melody A, and it's all stuff we know. There's nothing else new here, because at the end of measure 18 it goes, and then into 19, and then into 20, into 21 here, 22, and that's all the way through 26. You notice I stopped saying the measure markers, but it's all the same stuff. So let's go ahead and hear what this last melody A sounds like. And know that on 26, we end with just the 3 on the E, which we normally play anyways. We just don't play anything after it. So that final melody A section should sound something like this. I'm even going to play the pickup bar from the end of 18 just so we can get the full effect. So last 2 beats of measure 18 through the end of the song should be something like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and... And that is the end of the song with the ukulele 1 that's playing the chords, playing that along with it. This one is a doozy. This is a tricky song, a lot of difficult things to talk about. I was pretty anxious trying to do a tutorial on it just because for me, myself, rhythm is my weakness as a musician and a player. And a song like Take 5 is sort of known for being a little tricky in that regard. But I knew that it'd be really good for me to work on something out of my comfort zone. And it's a song that I have worked on before with some students, and whew, it's a fun one. But again, that trick of counting 1, 2, 3, 1, 2 is really what allowed me to be able to play it. I hope that helps you too. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them down below in the comments, and I'll look forward to seeing you guys next time for the next lesson here on Rock Class 101. Thanks so much.
All right, guys, so this lesson was a ton of fun. You got to work on both aspects of playing rhythm and the lead playing that melody, which is ultra catchy. And you also got to play in a different time signature. You got to play in 5/4, which is quite awesome and quite interesting, right? It's very unique thing. We don't often play in 5, so very cool aspect of this tune. So I do want to remind you, if you want to get the tabs to print off and keep for your records, you can do so by clicking this link or going to the site rockclass101.com and doing a search for Take 5. And also on that page was the super cool interactive tab player, so you can hit play, watch that tab scroll across in real time, highlight bars, loop sections, slow it down, all that fun jazz. So guys, again, I hope you enjoyed this lesson, and we'll see you in the next one. Take care.